nothing's that far.
Hi, my name is Peter Lane. I'm the Director of Operations here at the St. Lawrence Islands Museum of Art. And I want to thank you very much for making the trip up, those of you that did, and we're happy to have you here. I worked with Ron a little bit on installing some of these, and not all of them. He did. I just helped with some of the tall ones, and we've had a great reception from them. It's would have been a little more fun if we could have done this as the sun was going down, when we could see a little bit more of the lights, because that adds a nice element to the installation. But with that being said, I'd like to give you Ron Smith, OctoEyes.
Well, thanks for coming out. I want to talk to you about this installation, which I'm very excited about. It is called Reverie Myxogastria. Myxogastria is it's actually it's a biology name for slime mold. Myxo, I believe, is a Greek word meaning mucus. So there's a big ick factor in slime mold. I have a few pictures here just to get you in the mood. But you've probably seen slime mold if you have worked in a garden, or you've been walking through the forest, pulled up a rotting log. They're actually pretty common. They're gross. This is I think this one is called a dog vomit slime mold. You can kind of see why. And you know, you're probably wondering, well, why on earth would I choose to do an art piece about slime mold? But they do get pretty. There's some really interesting variations in them. They're very colorful, and they do kind of fun patterns. So I find that really fascinating. But that is not what got my attention. When they, I'll back up and say, they are kind of smart. So they're single-celled organisms, but they can get really big. They can be like 3 feet across. They move. They can solve mazes, and then later somehow remember the paths that they took to get to food in a maze. And scientists aren't really sure how that happens. So they're kind of interesting in that way. But they also, when they reproduce, they're kind of like mycelium. So mycelium, aka mushrooms, will shoot up what we are familiar with, the little fruiting bodies, mushrooms. And slime mold will do the same thing. They send up little fruiting bodies, and that is what sort of captured my attention when I started to see those. They're kind of amazing. They're tiny, like 1 millimeter or smaller, but the shapes and the colors and the sizes are just like otherworldly to me. So when I first saw those, I was really just captivated. And here's a few more examples that might start looking a little familiar to you. Honestly, I think they're kind of cute. You know, they're little monsters or something. I don't know. And this I think was the image that actually sort of set this idea in my head. Was I thought, what would it be like if these were larger than us scale, and you know, what would that experience be like? What if we were super tiny? And so to have this opportunity was really wonderful. When we first started talking about using this space, I was like, this was one of the first things that came to mind, because it gave me this chance to do this scale that we're smaller than these tiny things and puts us into their space. When I'm making stuff, it's a lot about, for me, is about exploration. And that is true of my process that I use to make these. So I have a little short video here that I'll walk you through, but it's got some images of me as I built these. So the orbs on top of each one started out as a large latex balloon. And I created this apparatus where the balloon could be attached and hung either upside down or stood up from the floor. And I used a combination of white glue and tissue paper to get it started. So it's kind of like a paper mache process. And I put that on the outside of the balloon and started forming this shell. And then I used gallons and gallons of white glue, and I would just pour it on to the balloon, and it would start to form this skin, and I would just keep doing that over and over and rolling, and it formed, just a little shell. But I probably went through over 10 gallons of white glue just to make these. And then it was a matter of decorating, putting a layer of decoration. So I used a variety of techniques for that as well. I'll let the video catch up to my speech there. Here's one way that I did it. I took some tissue paper and I wet it down and used a blowtorch to scorch it and create patterns in that. And then I would take the scorched pieces and apply it to the outside of the orb and use more glue. There's always lots of glue in this process. I used paint. I would take acrylic paint and let it dry on sheets of plastic. And sometimes I would brush it out, let it go flat, and then that would dry into big chunky flakes that you can kind of see. Other times I would just barely move it, and then it starts to crawl, and then as it dries, it does really interesting veiny, spidery kinds of patterns that I found really fascinating. So, if I let that dry, it's really easy to peel it off of the plastic and let that and apply it to the balloons. And then using paint and all that, and then I put layers of resin on the outside to give it some form, give it some structure, and make it more or less solid, because the balloons then came out. For the stems, I used styrofoam. My good friend Karen was a big help in that process for helping me cut holes in styrofoam. And sand it, put this coating on it. It's a really rough or a hard coating. It's a floor leveling compound, if any of you want to make your own. And then that would be left dry, and it would be painted, and then assembled to what you see here. So you're hearing sounds, and those are coming from the spores. I actually don't think spore is quite the correct name for these, but I'm not a biologist, so I'm calling them spores. And the sounds are coming from inside the orbs. There's also lights inside there, and they react to you being close to them. So especially if you come in, if there's not a lot of people in, and you come in to sit with them, they'll kind of get quiet. And every now and then they might do a little chirp or flash or whatever. But it's not until you actually start moving around that they'll get really active and they will do their thing. And I kind of wanted that because, and this is, I guess, where the Reverie part of the title comes in, because I imagine just sitting in like a forest, and if you get in a forest and you're really quiet, the forest starts to wake up, and you hear it. You can hear the animals and the birds, and I kind of wanted that effect so that as you move about, you're sort of disturbing it a little bit and they're aware of you. And I wanted that interactivity because I think that for art, it's really important that people be engaged with it for it to be effective. And for me, that, you know, I use light in my art a lot. This is the first time I've used sound on a scale like this. I think that part of it has been really successful based on the feedback that people have given me. They each have a vocabulary of about 23 different sounds. And that was the fun part. I used like crickets. There's like a whale. There's bicycle chains, like shifting gears of a bicycle is one of the sounds. Some of them, I don't even remember what some of them are. And then I manipulated them, I like played them backwards, I sped them up, slowed them down. Turns out crickets sound the same forward as they do backwards. Who knew? And yeah, so kind of what I got on the screen right here is there was some programming involved. So each one has its own little microprocessor inside. There's a sensor that detects if a body is nearby. There was metalwork involved to build the whole thing, and I had help with that from my friend Yale. And then, yeah, it all came together. But what was fun for me was I got to use all the different parts of my brain, because there's a lot going on in there. And so this was a great opportunity for me to like use that as much as I could. This is what's inside. So this is some of the 3D parts that I printed, or 3D printed some of the parts. And there are LEDs, there's a little speaker in there, and there's a lot of wiring. And these are some of the early prototypes. This was the first prototype I made just to see if this would work. And you know, it's not very firm, but yeah, it was the test case. Like, is this idea actually a thing? Is it gonna work? And you can, when we're done here, you can feel free to come up and touch this and do whatever you want with it. And here's another one, a later version. It's a little squishy. I'll talk about that in just a second. These spores, the slime mold, they have their whole life cycle, and these spores do too. So they come up and form these really cool structures, and then they kind of explode, and they send out their spores, and it's quite dramatic. I don't have an actual video of that. And I had to experience some of that with this project. So there were definite failures as I was building them. The balloons would pop. Like, I would get halfway through, spending days and days, and then the balloon would just pop. Or the air would just start leaking out of the balloon for no reason at all. Much like the spores that you find in nature, these, you know, I had this vision of these perfect orbs, these spheres that were just going to be, you know, there and just hang in and be perfect. And the reality was a little bit different. They started drooping and losing some of their structure. This tallest one is one of the original ones that I brought in. And I've kind of left it because I kind of like it. You know, it's kind of saggy. I've had the opportunity to come up multiple times and bring new iterations of these. But yeah, you guys see what is happening, which had a lot to do with the resin and that experimental process that I was engaged in. I do appreciate Peter's patience and help as we worked through some of this. But I like to see it as just showing the public the life cycle of the spores and kind of what they look like as they go through their cycle. Well, that's what I'm saying. Yeah. There's another second one. So, if you want to know more about slime mold, which who doesn't, right? There's a wonderful documentary, little short 12-minute YouTube documentary called True Facts, The Smartest Slime. Highly recommend you watch this. It's hilarious and full of information. Also, if you get the chance, come by at night, because what you're not seeing right now, or you can barely see, is they all glow. And honestly, I think it looks pretty cool. There's a picture. Yeah, come by at night, park your car, sit out there and watch. I think it's great. I want to take any questions?
I have a question.
Peter has a question.
What initiated the transfer from wherever you first saw the slime mold to this deep interest in the slime mold? Like what facilitated when you picked up that log and went on a hike and saw the gross, beautiful stuff that made you delve so far into it?
Well, I think what I first saw, I probably have seen slime mold around and just was like, ooh, or what is that? Cool, whatever. But it wasn't until I saw the pictures of the little spores. It was probably Scientific American. And I was like, what is that? I don't know, something about it just started sparks in my brain. And so that made me dive into, what is that? And I learned more about slime mold, and then that was like also super fascinating, right? When I started learning that. I don't know the answer to your question though. Like when I saw that, what happened in my brain that said, I want to make that, but sometimes the brain just does that. So, yeah.
So, I have a question. Where in the world do you find slime mold, or where don't you find slime mold?
Well, it likes, I think, like definitely in the forest you will find it. Any place where there's like rotting stuff, it likes to hide. Until it's ready to send up its spores, I think it likes to be under leaves or wood or just rotting stuff.
So not in hot climates, maybe?
I understand that it's mostly in temperate areas,
yes.
so it's not in polar areas, but I think definitely we have a lot of it around here.
Great, we'll look for it.
Yeah. Yes.
Knowing you as an artist, I've noticed you tend. How would your art be different if you were in a dry climate, say New Mexico? How much different would your art be? Do you think it would still be based so much in aquatics or wet environments, damp environments? Moist?
Yeah, that is a good question. I think because I'm a scuba diver, that it wouldn't matter. Like even before I started diving, I did ceramics, and I look back, and my forms looked like stuff you'd find at the bottom of the sea, and that was sort of, I don't know if that wasn't intentional, but it really was before I knew a lot about what was down there after I started diving. But yeah, I don't know. That's a good question.
And then, sorry, I had another question. Do you always move from macro world to micro? Do you like blowing that up from micro to scale? This scale. It seems like you do a lot of nominal life forms and blow them up to larger than anything.
I do like that. So some artists that I really love, I think have influenced me, Claes Oldenburg, who does those giant, he'll take just ordinary objects and blow them up. And that's always fascinated me because the scale changes everything, right? And changes the way you approach things and how you think about it. I remember seeing, like, in Dallas, at the Museum of Art there many years ago, there was a giant rope, anchored. There was like a stake and a rope. It was giant, and I just remember like, oh, I'm a rat. It just made me think that. You must be a rat trying to get on a ship. You know, I don't know. I just love the way that plays with your brain. I love like Georgia O'Keeffe, the way her stuff, especially like all her flower things, where she focuses in on just a tiny part of it, and it looks so different and so alien. For this, it already looks alien, and so I wanted to blow it up and bring that to our world, because this is all around us, more or less, and but we don't pay attention to it because we can't see it, and things we don't see, we don't keep in our mind, and maybe we don't take care of, and you know, all that. So scale is fun. Scale is also, I'm just going to throw out Burning Man. Everybody here knows about Burning Man, but before I went to Burning Man, I did small things. I did ceramics. I made little sculptural pieces. And after Burning Man, kind of my brain blew up. It was just like, scale is everything out there. Giant art pieces, and it really sort of woke me up to what was possible, that before I would have said, no, I couldn't do this. And so since that experience, all my work has gotten bigger. Yeah, no doubt. Yes?
How much time between blowing up the balloon and it's finished so you can install all that glue? And
It takes about a week to go through the whole process of the layers of glue, decorating, and then the resin, and then it needs to cure for another week, I found out, for it to really work.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So I gotta really applaud your courage and tenacity at pulling together a project like this with materials that it was a brand new idea. I'm just curious, during that process, I'm sure there were some real highs and lows about what you thought was amazing and worked so well at that moment, and what didn't. And I was just wondering if you could elaborate on that a little bit.
I really loved trying. I love trying things, period. I love being able to try it and having it, at least initially, it's like everything seemed to go great. There was a lot of trial and error along the way. And I loved the decorating part of it. That was all a new way of doing it for me, and probably the most enjoyable. The layering, the layers and layers is really tedious. But, you know, it's also time to just think about stuff. Glue. Think about slime mold.
Contemplative. Yeah.
And yeah, ultimately it's working. So that's kind of where my brain goes.
That's great.
But yeah, there were a lot of ups and downs.
Absolutely. Yeah. Good.
Yes.
So you spoke just a little bit about some of your backgrounds. I think it would be interesting to hear even more just kind of like that journey that you briefly mentioned about other things that you've made and sort of like how you arrived at creating, you know, larger scale experiential works. But yeah, I can talk a little bit more about some of the other things you made.
So like I had said, I did a lot of ceramic stuff previously, and there's twofold reasons for that. One was I could easily do it in my garage. I could do it, I had a full-time job, so I could do it in my spare time pretty easily. It was easy to compartmentalize, I think, and accessible. And then, like I said, Burning Man sort of changed everything for me in terms of like scale. And so I've made, one of my first things I took to Burning Man was it's called the giant fire thistle. It's about 15 feet tall. It's mostly metal that's been bent and welded into a form that to a lot of people looks like a pineapple. But it shoots fire out the top quite dramatically. I made another large fire sculpture that I called the Fire Tree, and it was just more of a tree form. It was very interactive. There were a panel of big buttons that you could hit that would cause big flames to shoot out all over the place. People love that. People love big flames and buttons. And then I scaled back a little bit and I made a piece called the Flock of Cybirds, which are little robot birds. There were about 16 of them. And that is where my interactivity started to get a little more interesting. So the little birds had a little backstory that I got to write, and they react to you being in front of them. They do cute little flapping things, and it kind of opened my eyes to the power of that interaction with the art, between the art and the people, and how it can really tug emotional strings. People got really attached to these little birds. And the story that I posted, they had little posts, and I put the stories on the posts, and if you read them, it was kind of a little tragic story, so that was a fun thing to play with as well. And now I'm just blanking. Well, yeah, I had some other projects.
Woodland.
The octopus, the butt.
Of course, how can I forget the jellyfish? The butt-activated jellyfish. So that was a project we did last year for Burning Man. A 15-foot tall jellyfish that had about 12,000 LEDs and little exercise balls around it, and you bounce on those balls and it changes the light patterns, and great fun. People love that piece, and it was so much fun to make and watch people engage with. So this is the next piece after that project. So yeah, it's been a really fun journey.
Are the pieces, these pieces are big, so are they installed somewhere? Do you have them somewhere besides your backyard?
The giant fire thistle is in my front yard. Come by and see it explode sometime. The fire tree got disassembled for other projects. I reused the materials. The cybirds exist. They're just stored in my studio. That is a frustrating thing about making art. Like, you make this art, and then what are you going to do with it after? Is a thing. It's a big question. I'm hoping, like this piece, I'm hoping to show or install in different places in Seattle. We're working on that. And the butt-activated jellyfish is actually touring around. It's been to Portland a few times. It was at the zoo for 3 months there. It's at Portland Winter Light Festival, and might be back there. Portland loves the butt-activated jellyfish, so might be back there this summer. Any other questions? Well, thanks everyone for coming. Thanks to the museum for this opportunity, and Peter for all your help. I really appreciate it. And may the 4th be with you.